Buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon, everybody. I know this has been a wonderful day. I don't know about you, but I feel so inspired by all the things. And like Claudia would say, I feel action directed. I'm leaving here to take action, and I hope we all do that. So very quickly, my name is Maria Cuba, and I have the privilege and the honor to lead this panel today on a very important topic, closing the representation gap. As you know, we have made progress in representation of Latinos. However, when we look at the data, that progress is not being shown or seen at the highest levels. When we look at the boards, corporate boards, not even nonprofit boards, when we look at executive level leadership, whether that is in the private sector or in the government, we see the data clearly shows that we are not equitably represented. So today I hope to have a conversation, learn a little bit of why we think that is, why is it that that representation gap exists, learn a little bit about your experiences in government and corporate, and also talk about what can we all do to change that, what are the actions that we can take. So we're not going to have introductions, but I hope that you share a little bit about your work. I would love to start with just really thinking about what are the obstacles that Hispanics are facing today, or that have faced historically, that are preventing us from reaching or from being at these roles. And once we get there, what are the obstacles that we face? In no particular order. Or maybe yes, we'll start with Christina.
Hi there. So I'm Christina Antello. I own Ferox Strategies, which is a government relations firm in Washington, D.C. And in case no one knows, there are exactly 2 Latina-run government relations shops in Washington, D.C. So this in and of itself is a big deal in that there's at least some Latinas in representation. For government, in my point of view, in order to get into the career of lobbying or in public service, it all is network. That is why I'm actually really excited about the event today that Claudia's put together, because this is the network. And what's keeping Latinos from really kind of advancing themselves and getting the opportunities in policy and also in advocacy is not having enough of a network developed around them. And so we need more opportunities from that point of view. Obviously education, which you've heard here before, but having the ability to be able to go to Washington, which it's an expensive city, to be able to live there, to be able to have the connections into different offices, to understand and have that background and be able to kind of assimilate and have a network of folks that you can tap into to really advance a career in that space.
Thank you. And what I love about that is that right off the bat, we're hearing that the people in this room can do something about it. Because networks are important. That's what we have right here. Thank you, Christina. Catalina.
Yeah, so I'm Catalina Vargas. I work in Bristol Myers Squibb, and I'm the Chief of Staff to the CEO, as well as I lead the diversity and inclusion commitments that the company has. So some of the things and the barriers that I see for when people get to senior roles, and we are Latinos, are very similar to the barriers that we face through our careers, right? So you mentioned one. Networking is definitely one that is very prevalent, right? I think in the case of people that actually immigrate from countries to here, we don't have the high school network, right? The college network, the postgraduate network. So there's a lot of aspects in that network that you miss, and that as much as you advance in your career and you do build networks advancing, you still don't have them as deep, right, and as broad as many other executives have. So that's one that I have that I think it's very clear. Another one, I think it's this code switching, right? So I'm, again, very thankful, grateful, and very proud to be working in a company like Bristol Myers Squibb, where we actually advance a culture of diversity and inclusion. So I feel very comfortable bringing my whole self to work, right? My authentic self. But I can see in other companies in corporate America where this is not advanced as much, then people code switch, right? Like my accent. Should I feel comfortable? Of course I feel comfortable, but I can tell you many people won't feel comfortable in different companies, and then they change that, right? I'm proud, I'm from Colombia, I tell everyone that. Yeah, so... And feliz Día de las Velitas para todos los colombianos. So, so I think, you know, again, that's important, but I can express that at work. Many people can't. And then there is this part of mentoring, right? So again, we have heard all the different figures, right? Very low number of people are in executive roles. So when you think about, I want to talk to someone that has the challenges that I have as a Latino in an executive team, but who do I talk to? There's just very few people that have similar experiences. So I think you need to continue to do this work, Claudia, because we need to make sure that people continue to advance in executive positions, in board positions. So in the future, if I or anyone here want to talk, it's just easy to talk to someone and say, guess what happened today? What would you do about it? Help me here.
I love that. Thank you, Catalina. And you're absolutely right. I always say that we are at our best when we lead with who we are completely, with our values, with the things that make us who we are. And when we show that, it's impossible not to notice. You know, the one thing I have seen over and over is that it is when that happens that we get those moments where we're seen, and then opportunities hopefully do come. Although I heard at another event that I attended that hope is not a strategy. So I want to talk a little bit about what this strategy is. But Ossie, what about you?
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me this platform here. And Claudia, thank you for making it easier for me to recruit Latinos for Latino Corporate Directors Association. So my name is Azi Gromada Mesa. I am the head of Member and Talent Services for Latino Corporate Directors Association. And our commitment is to increase Latino representation on corporate boards. It's a pretty simple mission that takes a village for us to complete. But in terms of the talent barriers, there's four that stick out. One is there is a clear misperception that there is a lack of Latino executive talent. Two, most of the networks of board members, which are not diverse, non-diverse, are insular and closed. Third, we don't have many Latinos in corporate board seats at this time, which means that the network of Latinos to bring and pay it forward is small. And then lastly, we are such a diverse community that from a recruiting perspective, it adds a complexity. We don't all have surnames that are Hispanic. We don't have visible physical characteristics like other communities do. And from a recruiting perspective, it makes it very challenging to identify Latinos for corporate board services. And we're here to ensure at Latino Corporate Directors Association that we remove those barriers of access and amplify the profiles of Latinos that should rightfully still be in the board today.
Thank you, Ossie. I'm really interested in hearing a little bit more about how we remove those barriers. There's going to be an opportunity down the line, but let's definitely revisit that. So let's talk about government. That's definitely an area where we also need more representation, particularly at the highest level of government. So how do we do that? What are the steps that we take as a community, and where do we need to look to in order to achieve that, Christina?
You know, this has been something that I've been working on. Aside from kind of my professional endeavors, it's something that I care about a great deal. We are roughly 19% of the U.S. population, and not that that's a strict number that we should follow, but it's a guide. We have 6 senators in the United States Senate, so clearly that's not representative. Also on the House, we have 34 members out of 435. That's not representative. And it's like, why is that? Now, some of it is political, and that, you know, the places where we are represented are designed not to get our participation. But to be quite honest with you, the African American community faces the same types of drawbacks, and yet they still organize better, they show up more, and they are engaged more, they are more vocal. Every time there is a slight to their community, they have a leader that goes out and calls it out, and I think that we miss that in our community. Who is our Al Sharpton? Who is our Jesse Jackson, who gets on the TV and says, I demand more for our community? Because I don't think there's one. I think that's number one. And I think that without that, there's no one for us to mobilize behind to be able to increase our numbers. So when they're divvying up, for example, the $2 trillion they just passed, who from our community is there to be like, we need more of that? Hispanic serving institutions, the schools, which, again, there's more of us, more of our kids, more of us in schools and colleges. We're not getting those dollars, but the historically black universities and colleges just got themselves, not only from corporate America, but from the government, another $200 million to fund all of them, because they're there to ask for it. We are not there to ask for it. How do we do that? We need to organize. We need to be, but this is where I am missing out on, because I don't know what inspires us to turn out. What inspires us to be a vote that is reliable enough that both parties want to vie for our vote, right? And we saw a tremendous turn. I will give you the grain of salt. I'm a Democrat, but regardless, I want the Republicans vying for my vote just as much as the Democrats, because without both of them competing for me, they don't give a crap about me when they're there. And so when we're at, you know, you're talking about like the southern border of Texas, which has for decades been Democratic, and all of a sudden you see the RNC popping up a tent and they're saying, hey, Trump, MAGA, come on, come over, and they all go, pay attention. Why did Democrats take them for granted? Why didn't they go there and talk to them? Why are they still not there a year after losing and a year before needing their votes again? They're still not there. And that is the problem. And like, until we figure out how to get these parties, these leaders to take us seriously, they're not going to. And that is, so while I'm trying as much as I can to get better candidates, recruit diverse candidates for both parties, diverse staff in the rooms that are making policy, and have diverse lobbyists here on K Street that can look at white corporate boards and be like, hey, did you think about XYZ in your policy? Because maybe minimum wage you should think about a little differently, and maybe your Latino consumers would view you a little differently. Without all of that, like, how do we move them? But I still can't figure out how we get Latino voters to turn out, which is still a problem.
Thank you for that. Yes, give her a big applause. It's also, how do we hold people accountable, right? It's like we show up, but who's showing up for us? So, Catalina, what about you, the corporate world? How do we get more people, more Hispanics in boards in the corporate world, in leadership, executive, C-suite roles? What do corporations need to do?
Yeah, so I'm going to go to a lot of the things that BMS is doing, because I think we're doing it right. There's much more to do, by the way, but I think there's a great foundation there. So first of all, it all starts with leadership, right? So we have a leader that really believes on that and drives it down very passionate and very strongly. It needs to be part of the business strategy. It needs to be funded. It needs to be measured, and we have all of that. Then we create a plan, right? So in the plan, for instance, part of what we did was we actually went externally and we committed to double the Latino representation in executives by 2022. So that's an excellent start, right? We're pushing forward with that. Then we have a lot of different programs for the Latinos that we have in BMS in relation to development plans, retention. We have a great business resource group and people colleague group. Actually, we have the leader here. And what we do there is we have a full-time person that just helps the Latino community within BMS drive forward in representation, in clinical trials, in health equity. So again, a lot of commitment from that end. We also do a lot trying to make sure that we have diversity in Latinos in clinical trials and health equity. So there is these all different efforts that we drive forward. And I think in each company, what they have to do is, of course, representation and workforce is very similar across. But according to the purpose of your company, think about how you can make a difference, but not only internally, but externally, right? So you think about, we work with clinicians, we work with supplier diversity. I heard a lot about that, right? So we actually take time to develop diverse suppliers and make sure that you do a difference in your community, in the community that you work. So again, I think corporate need to take this very, very seriously, and that's the way that we are going to continue to attract better talent internally and also make sure that we make a difference in the communities that we work for.
Thank you, Catalina. Let's give her applause. I loved how you name very specific steps that your company is taking. Is there a place where we can learn more about that, or do you share that? Is there like an open source that you share with other companies about the steps you're taking?
Yeah, so again, it's something that we're very proud. Actually, we have that in our corporate website. But part of what we were talking about as part of the leadership team, we talk about this a lot, is in 2022, one of the biggest things that we're going to do is start communicating more strongly so the world can hear. And I think you also touch on a very important aspect. We also have to make sure that we're working together with other companies. So we go faster because it's for a greater good.
Sharing the knowledge and working together, that's how we're stronger. Osi, I loved how you were able to really clearly name obstacles that you have identified. Like I said before, hope is not a strategy. We all want to see these numbers grow, but what are the strategies that you are working with in order to do that?
That's a great question, and I would like to commend Bristol Myers for having the intentionality of diversifying the organization, because that's where it all starts, with the leader making sure that they intend. In terms of the solution, we're doubling down as an organization. We are reaching out to every single public company. We started in California. We're doing this for the Fortune 1000, to anyone that does not have a Latino on their corporate board. And we're ensuring that they know what the business case is of Latino perspective in the top companies of the US, but as well that they have a solution. So LCDA is a national network of corporate Latinos at the highest level of governance and leadership. And it's designed that way to ensure that we are able to influence companies at the highest level. So we go in there and say, we know you have a problem, you're not as diverse as we want you to be, and we're going to be here as your solution. And that very specific demand strategy, as we call it, has led to some amazing connections that would never have happened if it wasn't that we made a proactive step. Some of those would be PayPal, AT&T, Big Lots. Those happen by a collaboration of our members and LCDA coming together and ensuring that they knew that we were here watching them, and we wanted to ensure that they were maximizing the shareholders' value, which is to have the Latino perspective and capitalize on the GDP, the purchasing power, and all that. And that's what we're really focused on, ensuring that we are able to do that. And the other piece is raising awareness. We raise awareness in two ways. We raise awareness by ensuring that there is a research out there that tells the story of the Latino board landscape. You know, we only make up 3.2% of the Fortune 1000. We make up 2.7% of the Russell 3000. In California, where we're 40% of the community, we only make up 2.7% of the board seats in California. And that information has allowed us to really change the conversation in the board, because many of them are saying, well, I didn't know that, or that's surprising. So we raise awareness by making sure that we are calling out organizations and providing them a research. And the last piece is making sure that our members in our community know each other. When someone reaches out to you for a board opportunity or an executive role or a manager role, you need to be able to say the names of 5 or 10 other Latinos when they call you, because you know what? Other communities are doing that. And we need to ensure that we are doing that. So we want to make sure that we in our organization build power networkers. That's where we're focused on.
That is wonderful. I know when you shine the light on something, you make it impossible to not be seen. You create accountability, because you're letting them know, I'm watching you, I'm seeing you, I'm looking at the decisions and the steps that you're taking, and there's going to be a parallel in how our community responds to that, right? That's a piece. We're running short on time, but I believe really strongly that we ourselves are one of our biggest tools, right? Our power to speak many times within the organizations that we represent. And one of the challenges that we face is like, how do we explain this? What is it, in this for any of you or for all of you, what are the one thing that we should say when we're having those conversations, when we get those opportunities to talk to the CEOs or the COOs or to other board members to really show this is the case for Latino representation?
You know, what I would say on the political side, and I know in your daily life maybe you don't want to watch politics, especially because it's so animus in it and what have you right now, but you know, I recently had a meeting with a candidate of color, and I said, I invited everyone I knew that could come support you, but I only got 6 people to show up. And she's like, that's okay, brown money follows white money. And that stuck with me, because I was like, she's saying that she has to be validated by white people before she will get brown people to support her. And so I encourage all of you, like as we're trying to diversify our Senate, our Congress, our White House, your local states, your local communities, think about that and look for the candidates that are strong, people you know, and encourage them and support them. And I know everybody's got personal dollars that you want to invest in your child's education, your retirement, or that nice pretty purse, because I like purses too. But think about it. $200 here, $500 here to get more brown candidates. That's an action item you could do.
Thank you so much, Christina. We could be talking about this for, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours more, probably to infinity, but I want to thank all the panelists for all the very actionable steps that you have shared with us today. And let's take this conversation to our companies, to our offices. Let's make sure we have power, we have agency. Don't forget about that. The people that can hold our corporations accountable is us. We're the ones from the inside. Well, thank you, and have a great afternoon.